Welcome to ISE's FX Options Weekly Outlook, a weekly outlook on the US dollar versus the major currencies, hosted by Jason Ayres, a top industry instructor and founder of OptionSource.net. Learn to trade your views on the strength or weakness of the US dollar.
Hi there and welcome to the ISE FX Options Weekly Outlook for October 20th to the 25th, 2008. I'm your host Jason Ayres, founder and president of OptionSource.net. As always, we're going to start with a look at our weekly US dollar index. This is a great way to gain a little bit of perspective as to how the US dollar has been trading against a basket of currencies. On our weekly chart here, last week we were focusing in on the 80 to 82 focal zone as being a key area of resistance and suggested that we should be cautious with respect to any sort of directional bias as we trade within this zone. We can see that this week we actually pulled back in and remained and consolidated within that zone. Now, any break above, as suggested last week, will likely see us play into that 85 to 86 focal zone. That being said, if we do happen to move towards lower lows, the 78 to 80 focal zone remains our key target to the downside. If we look at our MACD, we can see that we still continue to trend strongly to the upside. Our RSI is starting to show a little bit of slowing down in the momentum as we play within this overbought territory. This week, what I wanted to do was just take a quick look at the bigger picture US dollar index. We're still looking at a weekly chart. However, we're able to see the downtrend that's been in place since 2001 all the way into 2008. The reason why this 80 to 82 focal zone is a key area that we're looking at is because it represents a measured move on that 2006 to 2008 downtrend, and also is playing now into a key, what was previously a key support level. So looking at this area here, if there were to be any sort of rejection off of this, opens up the window for an even bigger continuation to the downside on the US dollar. A break through this in the bigger picture, remember nothing happens in a straight line, opens up the window for a move all the way into this 90 to 95 focal zone. So we have to keep in mind that what we've seen here as far as US dollar rally is a very small portion of the decline that's been in place over the last several years. With the bigger picture in mind, let's take a look at our first ISE FX options pair value, the CDD, the US versus the Canadian dollar. We were looking at a test in at the 119 to 121 level and suggested that we should be looking for a possible retracement down into the 112 to 114, which indeed took place. We since saw a rally off of that back into the 119 to 121 focal zone. Now, with that in mind, we can see here that we're meeting with some rejection here, which could conceivably see us pull all the way back down to retest that 112 to 114 area. Now, if we look at our MACD, we still continue to trend strongly to the upside. However, our RSI is tapering off with respect to its momentum. But any break above that 119 to 121 focal zone will see us most likely play into the 124, 125 area illustrated here on our price chart. Let's now look at the YUK, the US versus the Japanese yen. We saw our price break out of that sideways triangle back a week or so ago to play down into that 98 to 100 focal zone that we've identified here. Now, that being said, we were looking for a possible retracement back into the 103 and a half to the 104, which did indeed take place. What's interesting to note right now is that we see a similar pattern forming presently. The YUK seems to be trading in an inverse relationship to our other pair values. So at this point, we are looking for the potential for a break either to the upside or the downside, depending how it plays out of this particular pattern. Our MACD does suggest that we are starting to gain a little bit of strength to the upside, but again, this was similar to what we were looking at prior to the breakout of our last sideways triangle. Our RSI is really just kind of moving flat, suggesting that there's not really a lot of momentum either to the upside or the downside presently. So look to see how this particular pair value breaks out of this sideways triangle as it breaks above above or below key pivot points, calls or puts can be purchased, or perhaps the combination of both to take advantage of a possible move in either direction. Last week we saw the EUI, the US versus the Euro, play into our 75-76 focal zone here and pulled off its highs. We suggested we'd likely see a little bit of a retracement, which could conceivably find its way playing back into the 71-72 focal zone, which has taken place. We're now currently pushing back into that 75-76 focal zone, which still remains a key area for possible resistance or a possible rejection. Now, should prices happen to break through this, the window's open for a play into the 77-78 focal zone that we've identified here. Our MACD, although still maintaining its positive trend, suggests that the strength to the upside is starting to wane a little bit, and our RSI seems to be showing a lack of momentum in that direction as well. So should we find our price or our pair values rejecting at the 75-76, we look to play back down to the 71-72 focal zone. Now, we've identified a key pivot point right in here, which should prices break below that, we could target the 70-71 focal zone as a logical area for support. All right, we last left the BPX trading into our 58.5 to 59 focal zone. We suggested that there was the possibility of a rejection in this area as it represented a key resistance. We did see prices play back down into this 57 to 57.50 zone that we targeted. Consequently, a consolidation there has seen us play back into this range, which could possibly see us test that 58.5 to 59 area once again. Now, a break through that, we would be targeting to the upside in that 61 focal zone identified here. Our MACD shows that we're starting to weaken with respect to our trend to the upside. We look like we're about to cross over. Our RSI has definitely lost momentum to the upside, is now seems to be trending more towards that downside. With a break above this key pivot that we've identified here, we could conceivably be targeting the 55 to the 56 zone, representing a good opportunity to perhaps purchase some put options. All right, finally, let's take a look at the AUX, the US versus the Aussie dollar. We identified the 160-165 zone as being a key area of resistance and suggested that a play in towards this could conceivably meet with some rejection. That being said, we saw prices play down into the 142 to 145 focal zone that we targeted last week. Now, what's interesting to note is that we seem to be now forming a sideways triangle similar to what we observed in the YUK. And with that in mind, we have to recognize that the potential for a significant move to the upside or the downside is in place. Now, a push out of this sideways triangle would likely meet with some resistance into that 160 to 165 focal zone again. If we move down to our MACD, we can see that we're losing strength in that uptrend as our MACD begins to cross over or starts to move towards crossing over to the downside. We have shown a significant decrease in momentum in that upside trend. So should we see prices break to the downside out of this triangle, we could target the 130 to 135 focal zone as being the next logical area of support. Folks, this has been your ISE FX Options Weekly Outlook for October 20th to the 25th. As always, I'm your host, Jason Ayres, founder and president of OptionsSource.net. Thanks for joining me here this week. We'll see you here next week.
Thank you for participating in this week's session. Please join us again next week. For more information about Jason Ayres and to sign up for free FX Options trade alerts, just visit www.optionsource.net. To learn more about ISE FX Options, including our weekly webinar series, visit us at www.ise.com/fx. ISE FX Options can easily be traded through all options-enabled brokerage accounts. These exchange-listed securities are cash-settled in US dollars and have a European-style exercise.